Day my brother walked into my studio and told me he was going to have me fired. He had no idea he was talking to his own landlord. I still remember exactly what I was wearing. A gray blazer I'd bought on clearance at Macy's years ago. The kind you keep because it makes you feel put together even when you're not. I was standing near the reception desk, reviewing a vendor contract when I heard his voice carry across the open floor. That voice. 7 years, and it hadn't changed at all. Still, that particular brand of loud that wasn't quite shouting but wanted everyone in the room to know he was important. I didn't turn around right away. I needed a second. Let me back up. My name is Leigh. I'm 32 years old. I own an interior design and architecture firm called Aldrin Studio based in Nashville, Tennessee. We do commercial spaces, mostly hotels, restaurants, corporate offices. We have 11 full-time employees, a roster of contractors, and last year we landed a contract to redesign the lobby and 3 floors of a boutique hotel in downtown Atlanta that got written up in Architectural Digest. I say all of this not to brag, but because 7 years ago I was sleeping on an air mattress in my coworker's living room with $214 in my checking account and no idea how I was going to afford groceries that week. What happened between then and now is a longer story. But it starts with my family. I grew up in Knoxville, middle child of 3, my older brother Damon, me, and my younger sister. My parents weren't bad people in the way that word usually gets used. They didn't drink, they didn't hit us, they showed up to things. But there was a hierarchy in that house that I understood from a very young age, and I was not at the top of it. Damon was the oldest son, which in my father's mind carried a kind of automatic gravity. Everything he did was a bigger deal. His grades, his gains, his opinions at the dinner table. My sister was the baby, so she got softness. I was the middle, which meant I was mostly background noise. I told myself it was fine. A lot of people have it worse. I focused on school, on design, on getting out. I got a scholarship to study architecture at UT and worked part-time through all 4 years. By the time I graduated, I had a job offer in Nashville at a mid-sized design firm. I was 22 and genuinely proud of myself. I remember calling home to tell my parents, and my dad said, "That's nice, Leigh, your brother just got promoted." He wasn't being cruel. That was just how conversations went. I moved to Nashville. I worked hard. I got good at my job fast. And within a couple of years, I was leading small projects on my own. I started building a client list, a reputation. I was dating someone, a guy named Caleb, not the love of my life, but decent, kind, stable. Things were going okay. Then my parents decided it was time for me to come home, not asked. Decided. My brother Damon had gone through a divorce and was struggling financially. He had 2 kids, a mortgage he could barely cover, and my parents had apparently decided in one of their closed-door kitchen conversations that the solution was for me to move back to Knoxville, take a job at a local firm that paid about 30% less than what I was making, and be available to help with my nephew and niece while Damon got back on his feet. My mother presented this to me over the phone one Sunday like it was already settled, like I'd been consulted and agreed. I said no. I said it as gently as I could. I explained that I was building something real in Nashville, that I couldn't just walk away from it, that I was happy to help Damon in other ways, but I couldn't rearrange my entire life on a week's notice. My mother went quiet. Then she said, "I didn't think you were this selfish. That was December. By February, I had been disinvited from a family trip to Florida, stopped being included in the group text chain, and was receiving one-word replies to my messages if I got replies at all. I drove home for my niece's birthday in March and sat at that table while everyone talked around me like I was a piece of furniture. Damon barely looked at me. My dad made a toast to family and didn't say my name. I drove back to Nashville that night and cried for about an hour somewhere on I-40, and then I pulled myself together. I heard nothing from them after that, nothing real anyway. An occasional forwarded email chain, a generic "hope you're well" from my mother on my birthday that felt worse than nothing. I stopped reaching out after a while. It hurt less if I just let the silence be the silence. I poured everything into work. A mentor of mine, a woman named Cecile who ran her own firm for 20 years before retiring, had been watching me for a while and started letting me shadow her on consulting projects. She taught me the business side of design. The part that architecture school doesn't cover. How to structure contracts, how to price your value, how to protect yourself legally, how to build a brand that attracts the right clients instead of chasing every job. She introduced me to people. She vouched for me. When I was 26, I took out a small business loan and started Aldrin Studio out of a two-room office space I shared with an accountant. The first year was terrifying. There were months I paid my employees before I paid my own rent. But we got a few good projects, we did exceptional work, and word started spreading. By year 3, we had outgrown the shared office. By year 4, we had moved into a proper studio space in the Gulch neighborhood. By year 6, we were profitable enough that I made my first real estate investment, a commercial property in East Nashville that I bought through my holding company Aldrin Properties, LLC. I kept that holding company very quiet. The firm, Aldrin Studio, had a website and an Instagram and a press presence. The properties were a completely different entity, registered under the same umbrella but not publicized. There was no real reason to hide it. I just preferred to keep my financial life out of the spotlight. My attorney handled most of the communication with tenants through her office, and so it stayed for years until my brother walked into my studio on a Tuesday afternoon in October. He was there with a woman I didn't recognize, maybe early 40s, blonde hair, lanyard around her neck with a corporate badge from a commercial real estate development company based in Charlotte. She was the one who'd requested the meeting. Her name was Paige, and she was scouting Nashville locations for a client who wanted to open a boutique hotel. She'd bound us through Architectural Digest. Completely normal, completely legitimate. She had booked the meeting through our website 2 weeks prior. I didn't know she was bringing Damon. Apparently, they were dating. I found this out later. What I knew in that moment, standing near my reception desk, was that my brother was walking through my studio door. He saw me at about the same time I saw him, and the way his face moved, there was a flicker of something, surprise maybe, or discomfort, and then it just smoothed over. He straightened his jacket and gave me this look, the look I had been getting my whole life. A little bit amused, a little bit dismissive, like my presence was mildly inconvenient. "Leigh," he said, not, "Oh my God, it's been years," or "This is unexpected." Just my name, flat, like we'd seen each other last week. "Damon," I said. Paige looked between us. "You two know each other?" "She's my sister," he said. He said it had a footnote attached that I was the only one who could read. I showed them back to our conference room. My project manager, Theo, offered coffee. I excused myself for a few minutes under the pretext of grabbing some portfolio materials and stood in my own bathroom for about 90 seconds doing breathing exercises. 7 years. Not a single real conversation in 7 years. I went back into that room and I was professional. I pulled up the hotel project work, walked Paige through our process, answered her questions. She was sharp and engaged. Damon sat at the corner of the table mostly quiet, which was unusual for him. He scrolled his phone. He looked around the studio through the glass walls. I could see him clocking things, the size of the space, the quality of the finishes, the framed press features on the wall. About 40 minutes in, Paige excused herself to take a call. The room went quiet. Damon leaned back in his chair. "You've done well for yourself," he said. The tone wasn't warm. It was the thing people say when they expected something different. "I have," I said. He nodded slowly. "Dad would be surprised." I let that land and didn't respond to it. He looked around the room again. "Who owns this building?" "A property holding company," I said. He nodded like that confirmed something. "What's the lease situation? This is a big space. Can't be cheap." "We manage our costs," I said. He smiled. Not a nice smile. "I'm asking because Paige's company has been looking at properties in this corridor. I actually know the group that owns a lot of this block. If your lease is coming up, it might be worth a conversation. Depending on what you're paying, they might be able to work something out. Or not, depending on what they want to do with the space." He let that trail off just enough. I looked at him. He looked at me. "Are you suggesting," I said, keeping my voice completely even, "that my lease might be in jeopardy?" He did a small shrug. "I'm just saying development pressure in this area is real. I have a relationship with some of these owners. Could help. Could not help depending on how things go. There it was. He had been in my building for less than an hour. Less than an hour after 7 years of silence, and he was already trying to find a pressure point. I took a breath. I picked up my phone and opened my email slowly, and I found the most recent correspondence from my attorney regarding the property. I turned the phone around and set it on the table in front of him. Read the sender's name, I said. He looked down. His attorney's name was there, yes, but the email was addressed to me, not as a tenant, as the owner, as Leigh Aldrin, managing member, Aldrin Properties, LLC. He stared at it for a long moment. I own this building, Damon, I said. I own this building and the two adjacent ones. Whoever told you they know the group that owns this block was either mistaken or lying to you. That group is me. The color in his face changed. Paige came back into the room then, still scrolling her phone, already talking. Something about the client's timeline shifting. She stopped when she saw the two of us. Everything okay? She asked. Fine, I said. I smiled at her because she had nothing to do with any of this and she was a potential client and she deserved professionalism. I was just clarifying some details about the property for Damon. She looked at him. He had gone very still. The rest of the meeting lasted about 20 minutes. Paige was professional and warm and I liked her genuinely, which made the whole thing stranger. We talked about the Atlanta project, about what we could offer her client, about timelines. I gave her our full pitch and meant every word of it. Damon said almost nothing. When they stood to leave, Paige shook my hand and said she'd follow up that week. Damon lingered at the door. I thought for a second he might say something real. Something like, I'm sorry I missed 7 years, or even, that was a stupid thing for me to say. Something. He said, You really own all 3 buildings? Yes, I said. He nodded once, stiffly, and left. I went back to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk for a while. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect you to feel victorious in those moments, and I mostly just felt tired. Tired and a little sad. Because no amount of square footage or press features or correct answers in a conference room gives you back the thing that was actually taken. I didn't get those 7 years back. I didn't get the birthday phone calls or the holidays or the small ordinary moments that families accumulate without even thinking about it. I got good at my work instead of getting those things, and I'm proud of what I built, but it's not the same. My phone buzzed an hour later. A text from a number I'd deleted but recognized immediately. Mom said Damon ran into you. Can we talk? My sister. I sat with that text for a while. She had been 14 when everything fell apart, which is young enough that I've never been able to fully hold it against her that she went along with the silence. She was a kid. She went where the current took her. I typed back, I'd like that. Not right now, but I'd like that. She sent back a heart. Paige did follow up. Her client moved forward with us. The hotel project is now in the design development phase, and it's one of the more interesting briefs we've had in years. Damon has not reached out. I don't expect him to. Some people only reach for connection when they think they can get something from it, and when that falls through, they don't know what else there is to say. I used to need him to understand what he'd taken from me. I don't anymore. The understanding I needed, I had to find somewhere else, and I did. Slowly, over years, in the work and in the life I built without anyone's permission. There's something my mentor Cecile told me once during a period when I was doubting everything. She said, the people who write you off early are betting on a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. They can't win that bet. Time takes care of it. She was right. I turned 32 last spring. I had a dinner with friends at a restaurant I'd redesigned the year before. Theo gave a toast. My sister called. I sat at a table full of people who had chosen to be in my life, not because of blood or obligation or what I could do for them, but because of who I actually was. And it felt like enough. It felt like more than enough. I used to think that being written off by the people who were supposed to know you best was the worst thing that could happen. I don't think that anymore. What I know now, after 7 years of building something in the quiet, after that Tuesday afternoon when my brother stood in my conference room and the whole thing turned, is that the way people treat you says almost nothing about your worth and almost everything about their own fear. Damon didn't push me out because I was less. He went along with it because the version of me that stayed small was easier to be around. The moment I stopped fitting into the space they'd assigned me, I became a problem to manage. That's not bitterness. That's just what I eventually understood. And here's the part that took me even longer to accept. Being right about that didn't make the years back. Knowing why it happened didn't undo the birthdays I ate dinner alone or the Thanksgivings I spent with friends, because going home didn't feel like going home anymore. I had to be honest with myself that I was carrying grief, not just anger. Grief for something I never fully had. That honesty, sitting with it instead of outrunning it, was its own kind of work. What kept me going wasn't certainty. There were months in that first year of running the studio when I genuinely didn't know if I'd made a terrible mistake. I had employees depending on me. I had a loan I was responsible for. I had a mentor in Cecile who believed in me more consistently than I believed in myself, and I leaned on that harder than I've ever admitted out loud. Showing up anyway, when you're scared, when you're not sure, when you don't have anyone at home cheering you on, that's the thing nobody talks about. Not the big dramatic moments, just the Tuesday mornings when you open your laptop and do the work because that's who you decided to be. I think about what Damon did in that meeting, the casual threat, the implied leverage, and I don't think he's a monster. I think he's someone who learned early that power was something you took from other people, and he never questioned it. Nobody made him question it. That's a failure of something deeper than just character. It's a failure of never being asked to look at yourself honestly and sit with what you find. I was asked to do that, not by anyone in my family, by necessity, by loneliness, by years of having to figure out who I was without anyone reflecting it back to me. And what I found, slowly, was someone I could respect, someone who made decisions based on what was right rather than what was safe, someone who chose integrity when it cost something, who built carefully and thoughtfully, who didn't burn the bridge when she had every reason to. The life I have now wasn't handed to me and it wasn't taken from anyone else. I made it out of the years they thought they'd wasted me. That's the part that matters. When my sister texted that night, I felt something loosen that I hadn't realized I was still holding. Not everything gets resolved. Not every relationship finds its way back. But some things do, slowly, on the right terms, and that possibility is worth leaving the door open for, even when it's hard. I'm 32. I have a studio I built from nothing, a team I'm proud of, a life that fits me. The people who bet against me placed that bet on a version of me that I left behind a long time ago. They lost. I didn't even have to try.